most of European countries, VAT is 23%. So they're getting their tax on that. And if you're buying it as an individual, yeah, if you buy it as a company, but then you're caught either corporation tax or dividend when you're paying yourself. But like say petrol as well, because there's so much taxes on that. Is there
Right.
ways of reclaiming any of that when you're going down the kind of the road that you're taking?
I haven't found any, but because it's basically you're not in charge of the tax. You're not paying it, and so even if the person who paid it overpaid, you're not entitled to get any back because you're not the one paying it, right? Um, at the same time, so as an entrepreneur, I've some e-commerce businesses. I don't charge sales tax there, and uh, I guess worldwide, I don't charge sales tax, but I guess they're starting to do things now where if you ship to other countries, they want you to, but they have no jurisdiction. So what are they going to do? Come to the US and sue me over, $5 that I would have paid in tax for that one order. But as far as the US goes, so they actually spent like a good 10 or 20 years trying to get the sales tax to work across states for online orders, because it used to be you would only pay if you shipped to your own state, and outside of that you wouldn't have to. Um, but my understanding of how this tax works, and no one's come to challenge me on it, it's not to say they won't, is that and you look at all these different states and cities and everything, you have to apply for a sales tax permit. And so there are these third party systems that will basically do that for you. So if you say, I'm shipping an order to this city, they'll say, okay, how much is it? They'll track the tax. They'll tell you how much to charge. And then they want you to give them the money, and then they'll give it to the city. And they have contracts with like all these cities. But I don't want to participate in that. Right. So I'm not legally, especially like in places, New York, I cannot collect sales tax from New York because I don't have a license to do. I'd be breaking the law if I collected sales tax in New York, right? Unless I went there and applied for that permit or did it through this third party thing. But I don't want to do that. Now, New York might say, okay, but if you're going to ship stuff to New York, you have to do that. Well, they'll tell me that. And the government tells you you have to do things all the time, but that doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just like the IRS, right? They can put misinformation on their website, but that's not the law, right? And so my understanding is, especially the way these laws are written, is that um, California, for example, says this tax is on the privilege of selling products in our state. Well, how is that a privilege? I thought that was a right. Like, I have a right to own property. I have a right to trade that property with other people. These are rights. That's not a privilege, right? And so my understanding of it is um, that the privilege only applies to privileged sales, which is if I have a foreign corporation, for example, or even a corporation. And interestingly, the Supreme Court has ruled, as much as we hear about, what is it? People United, what's it called? The case where they say corporations are persons. We hear a lot about that, but in reality, the Supreme Court's already said corporations are entities of the state. They were created by the state. It's a privilege to operate as a corporation, and therefore you don't have Fourth and Fifth Amendment protections. So if they want to see your books, you have to show them, right? This is like you don't have any privacy with a corporation. As an individual, you do. So interestingly enough, you look back at like all the cases when they were, going to the Supreme Court and trying to get, all these people to pay these, interstate sales taxes now for online purchases or for shipping purchases. And these were all corporations, which is interesting because so, as an individual, like I'm just exercising a right to trade property, rights that I have that a corporation might not have. Um, like the courts will even say that the 14th Amendment applies to people, but it doesn't apply to corporations. So I go to any state and the law must treat me equally, but that doesn't apply to corporations. They don't have to treat you equally as a corporation. So if I have rights in that state, if I were a citizen of that state and I can own property and trade property, then I wouldn't have to pay that tax. So that's the philosophy that I go by, and so I don't charge sales tax on any of my websites, and I refuse to pay them. Now, the as a software engineer at my day job, like it's interesting to see that they even collect. It's a U.S. based company, but depending on what state they sell to, and it's virtual products, right? Video streaming, that kind of content. Um, if they sell it to somebody in Mexico or Brazil, they're required to put in their tax ID to, connect like that's the government policy. Now, of course, they're operating as a corporation, and and again, different countries might be more authoritarian and say, you don't even have rights as an individual not to charge these taxes or not to collect that information. But the bigger they are, these bigger corporations, they're always afraid of governments, right? What if we get kicked out of that country? What if they seize our bank accounts or, do something? So they always play it safe and play by the rules, even when it's not required. But as a corporation, they are required to do certain, more things.